Jackson. I'm the county manager. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone. And it is your pleasure, the fact that I am going to speak briefly and sit down and shut up. But with this, just a little bit of housekeeping. There is water available in the back of the room. Please feel free to any of the material at your table. Restrooms are immediately down the hall, I believe to the left. And of course there are exits on the front of the building as well as this side here. Please make use of the space, take any movement you need during this for your own personal needs. With this, this is all stemming out of opioid crisis. Ultimately, because Scotland County, the Board of Commissioners, a number of years ago, participated in a nationwide lawsuit against a number of the manufacturers of opioids. It was a multi-billion-dollar business, and still is. But because of this, a number of governments, states, sued the manufacturers and distributors. As a matter of fact, the county commissioners, along with other governments across the nation, are still continuing legal action against other distributors. For the first portion of this lawsuit, there was a mass settlement agreement, which was in the billions, which Scotland County's percentage was $2.7 million. The caveat to that is we will collect that over the next 17 years. So that's about $125,000 a year. And so we're trying to figure out, like every other county in North Carolina, like most of everyone else, we're trying to come up with plans of making the best use of those funds to address the use of opioids in our community. One thing that I've kind of pushed in the initiation of this is, I may not be as old as I look with the gray hair, but I was a teenager in the 80s, so I remember Just Say No. I remember the war on drugs very well. And on the nightly news, it was very much an issue of a series of scrolls when they talked about drugs on the 3 channels we had at that point in time. And they were the same images that they used for drugs, homeless, and crime. And we all know exactly what that is, so it was very easy. Even though my father worked in the sheriff's department, retired from there, it was still very easy to go off and imagine substance abuse. I didn't know the word opioid at the time. Substance abuse, drug abuse, addicts, that was those people. It was never us. And later on, when I went to college, started getting into some different statistics, started actually experiencing a little bit more real life, I started to learn that substance abuse was not there. Statistically, there's zero difference in between black and white utilization. There's no difference in between people in my economic class, the economic class of the wealthy, and the economic class of the poor. There's no difference other than if you're struggling to find a place to live tonight, it's very hard for you to cover your addiction versus someone in my economic class. We can cover our addiction for a life. So one of the first things that we helped create a committee in the county. And with this partnership, we have the hospital, the sheriff, police department, the health department, social services, mental health, school system. You know, we brought in, at least to begin with, the primary players that are dealing with this on an institutional level. And we started coming up with ideas. But now it's to the point where, more importantly, we need to get into having communication, conversation in the community. with real, honest talk. And one of the things that I definitely, and people have probably gotten annoyed with me talking about it in the committees, I wanted to get rid of the concept of those people. Because most, I would assume, not only everyone in this room has had an issue with a family member or close friend with substance abuse. But frankly, the numbers don't lie. Everybody in Scotland County, everybody in North Carolina, within very quick terms, lay their hands with somebody who has been negatively impacted by substance use. And for that reason, right, so I get to sit down and you get to listen to somebody who actually can speak. I've talked to someone who is definitely not one of those people. And at this point in time, I would like to introduce two people who I happily call friends, but the Cadells. And if they would be willing to share their story about it, because if anyone knows them, no one can talk about those people about them. You're welcome.
Well, that started out really not so well. I think I'm loud enough, but okay. I'm definitely loud enough now. Our special person, her name was Julie. When she was 15, our daughter, when she was 15, and her brother was already attending Appalachian State University, and he'd already abandoned her, and now her older sister, Christy, was fixing to go off to school as well at Appalachian State. And here's this child that's going to be left behind by her two older siblings. When I began to notice mood swings, so many different behavioral changes, withdrawal, lack of communicating with us, not wanting to be around us, I felt like it was just that she was so depressed about being abandoned by her older siblings. We didn't realize for years that Julie was struggling with substance use. Had no idea. She would deny, she would lie, anything that she could to protect us from what she was going through, what she was doing. And I'm going to have to use a few notes. I'm not going to be able to just say. Finally, her siblings came to us and told us what was going on with Julie that she was using. And we just fell apart. We were shattered. We were devastated. I went to every place in this county that I could think of, every office, every doctor, and pleaded, please, you've got to see my daughter now. She's using drugs and you've got to stop it and you've got to protect her. Help me, help me. And I couldn't get help anywhere. Nobody really understood. But finally, when Julie had been using long enough that she realized she really was sick and that she couldn't go the next day without it, that she was addicted. It scared her. It frightened her. She was feeling so guilty for what she knew she was putting us through, and so much despair and anger, so much anger. Finally, though, when she got sick and tired of being sick and tired, she came to us and asked for help. Pleaded with us, help me, Mom. You know how you know those movies, those horror movies where you see somebody running from a murderer and they can't get the keys and the lock fast enough and they just can't get it locked? That's how I felt for 16 years. 16 years of worrying about this child. Is she going to survive? We had Julie in 11 different treatment centers. 11. We had her where people would at least keep her 3 days or 7. Maybe there was one that was 28. That's not enough for these children. That's not long enough for them to find the coping strategies or to get so, I don't know, tied into AA or to just to find her way. It's just not, it just wasn't long enough. She needed way more help than that. And it was even hard to get her just even some mental help, some kind of program that could help her with her medicines, with depression medication. I think the biggest impact on me and my husband during this watching Julie suffer so much was grief and guilt and anger. Julie suffered so much from grief and guilt. And watching her struggle, watching her in so much pain was, I cannot even begin to tell you what that felt like. In reading one of Julie's books, she had written in there, "We are not bad people trying to get good. We are sick people trying to get well." And that was her lament. For you to get to know Julie better, I want to read you a couple of things that she wrote down so you can get inside of her head and understand. This is her daily reflections book from AA. Can you help me there? This book is falling apart. She read it so much. Okay. Relapse. In big letters, relapse. After 5 months, clean and sober, I felt as though I failed myself as well as those in my life. Now I'm alone in the dark again. And this was her prayer journal. And on it was a rock that she found at the end of a labyrinth to bring her peace and to help make her whole. I tend to pray before I go to sleep, but I am noticing that I am falling asleep before I finish, and I feel guilty. I used to go down on my knees before bed, and that way I know I can finish and I'm completely focused on prayer and with that time with God. I would love to find that serene place to go to and just be with God and talk to Him one-on-one. I will work on that. As I pray all day, every day now. I walked into a store the other day and I wanted a drink so bad. I was so scared I was going to fail again. I ran to a dirty bathroom and fell on my knees and begged for help to get through that moment. Finding that peaceful place will be something I want to work on. Prayer can be wherever. God will meet you as you come. And that's what she was going through. As parents, finally we discovered Al-Anon. And in there we learned a lot of things about ourselves that we might not have known otherwise. First of all, we realized that maybe our marriage is going to survive, and maybe we individually would too. That Al-Anon helps you to take the focus off your addict, your loved one, and focus on yourself and find coping skills to work through your pain and your devastation and your guilt. The big guilt, of course, for a mother is, where did I go wrong? How did I fail my child? I had to have done something wrong. We had to learn not to enable Julie. We knew that that would be detrimental, but do you understand that not enabling a child is so counterintuitive? Changing the locks on your house, sending her out and dropping her off in a strange city, at the emergency room of a hospital because another rehab center won't accept her because she tested positive for having had drugs in her system in the last month. We just had to drive away and abandon her, all alone, at an emergency room, in a hospital, in a city we knew nothing about. And worrying about my husband and his health, and and our mental health. It was all we could do to get up and go to work, and to function, to maintain our friendships, to maintain our relationships with our church, with our family, with my mom, who was at Scotia Village, kind of new to our community, and then have to put this on her, the burden of this on her. It was just, so hard. And then there are the siblings, her brother and her sister. The depression that kicked in for them, the feelings of guilt and feelings that they've abandoned her, left her behind because they were trying to live their lives. It just touches everyone. It just impacts not just the parents or the children. It's like throwing a rock into the water. The ripples just go forever and ever through those you love. Thank you so much for being concerned and interested in helping us find strategies to help those precious children like Julie. We appreciate it.
Kevin asked me would we come and talk about the impact that opioids had on our family. I checked and realized we started at 6 o'clock, and I took the authority to go ahead and order breakfast. They'll be delivered at about 6 o'clock in the morning. I could stand here that long and talk to you about the effects that it had on our family. And one of our, well, I guess essentially Ashley Julie was in a rehab, and we actually went and spent a week with her. Part of the day we would be with her and her activities, and part of the day we were not. But one of the things that I was encouraged to do was to write a letter. Dear Addiction. And boy, it just came pouring out of all the things that addiction had robbed her and us, a family, of. I just could go on and on and on. Holidays, we didn't know what to expect. We learned through support of others, that you don't set your expectations too high. You take what you can get. And that's how we coped. That seemed to always be a tough time for her. And I think that could be said for most people that are dealing with this stuff. But one of the things that a doctor showed me one day, and I started to try to do one, and I never got around to it, but everybody in this room knows what a mobile is. It's hanging up, and it just kind of moves around very methodically in the breeze, and everything's fine. If you can envision that and imagine that the bottom character on that mobile is the addict, walk up and pull that thing and see what happens. The whole thing starts going crazy. It's chaos. And that's the closest I can come to trying to describe what it feels like when, things would be kind of even keel for a while. And then when she got off track, it was like, holy, the whole crowd was crazy. And it was just the kind of thing that when you're dealing with it and your family's dealing with it, and one thing that Carolina didn't hit on when she talked about siblings and their guilt and their concern was the anger. After a while, they get fed up with it. And they're trying to celebrate Mother's Day with a mother, and all of a sudden, things come unglued, and they get tired of that. And then you've got anger to deal with. It's all the emotions you can imagine. And as a daddy, daddy's supposed to fix things. The doll breaks, daddy can fix it. The bike breaks, daddy can fix it. And that's the way we are made. But some things daddy couldn't fix, but daddy couldn't handle it. And that was tough. That was hard. It took me a long time to realize that I couldn't. And then, you start dealing in it and you don't realize how sick you are. I want to share something with you that I haven't shared with a lot of people. But you get so preoccupied with it, you get so immersed in it that, I would be sitting in my office with a client and they talking, and all of a sudden they'd look at me and say, Mr. Cannell, you all right? Because I wasn't connected and they knew it. I went to work one morning and drove right past my office and went to First Capital Bank and tried my dangest to unlock the door. It's a brick building with a glass door. And luckily one of the girls came out and said, Mr. Cannell, what are you doing? Thank God the key didn't fit. I was trying my best to get in that bank, thinking I was at my office. That's how immersed and sick that I was. And so you have to try to function with all that. And the other thing is, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I think I'll be an addict. That just don't happen. It might make a bad decision, but then some people can deal with it and some people can't. And it only takes one time and they're off to the races. And they don't understand it any more than we did. And it took me a while to realize that too. But it's like she said, we're not bad people trying to get good. We're sick people trying to get well. And I had to go through, I asked the doctor one time when I went to some sessions and he was explaining the physiological part of it. But I understood it. And I thought, why do I have to get here to understand that or to hear that? Well, why does it take having to get here where we are to help me understand this? But it is. There are people who say, well, that's a bunch of bull. They can straighten up if they want to. No, they can't. I don't know. There's never been anybody in this world that wanted sobriety more than you. would never convince me differently. But it was bigger than her. She told me when they fact, we were sitting there one night and she just looked at me and said, "Dad, I need a meeting." I said, "Get in the car." And we started riding until we found a meeting. And on the way there, she said, "I just wish sometimes you could take the top off my head to look in there and just see what I'm dealing with. Maybe you could understand it better then." But, that stigma, and I was guilty of it. I was one of those people who would tell you that that's a bunch of bull. Somebody wants to get straight, they can jerk themselves up and do it. I was one of them. And the first meeting that I went to, I was so ashamed to be there. I sat in the parking lot and I waited until I thought everybody was inside, and I looked up and down the road to make sure no cars were coming, and I ran from my car into that place. And when I bolted through those doors, I knew half the people in the room. That was an eye-opener. And it was like, whoa, what are you doing here? But we've got to get past that. There's still a lot of people. It's like Kevin alluded to. It's one of those people. But they're people. They're just that. They're humans. They just have that problem. And for those that deal with it, I tell them, when I meet them, somehow or another, after a while you have that little connection, and after a little conversation, And I'll stop the conversation and say, "You know what, I just want to tell you something. I got the utmost admiration for you." And they look at you like you got 3 heads, because they don't hear that much. And they said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" I said, "What I mean by that is every morning all I got to do is get up, drink my coffee, and take a shower, and I'm ready to go. I don't have to spend an hour trying to get up enough courage to walk out that door to try to make it one more day. And I'm not sure, in fact, I know I don't have what it takes to do that. And there are some people out there that do it every day, and I do. I have the most admiration for them. There's help, but it's hard to find. We went through all that. We call and until they found out you had some insurance. Then all of a sudden the conversation changes, and that's disheartening. I was glad because we had it, but I thought about all those that didn't. And then, 3 days and back out is not the answer. 28 days and back out is not the answer. We've got to find some way to do some long-term treatment and have some avenues for these people to find some sense of normalcy, to try to get back into communities and workplace and those kind of things. It's difficult. You get out and then what? Everybody gonna hire you. Don't have a car. Don't have transportation. In many cases, don't have a license. So imagine that. And it's just, we're leaving them hanging. We really are. And my prayer is that, somehow we can find a way to help bridge that gap. There's a lot of people. I would venture to say that you can't find anybody, and I'll say this, if they tell you they're lying, if you ask them, have you been affected by it, and they say no, maybe not personally, maybe not immediate family, but it's out there pretty close somewhere. And the thing that I'm having a real hard time dealing with is the last 3 years we dealt with COVID. It was awful. It was terrible. I hope I don't live long enough to see another pandemic. But we got something just as bad. and you can't protect yourself from it with a mask. There's no vaccine for it. So what do? Nothing. COVID hits and we go home, close down everything, shut down, lock up, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not saying that didn't need to be done, but I'm saying this problem, the deaths in North Carolina last year from opioids increased 25, a little over, almost 26% in 1 year. And it was already big. We're talking thousands of people. We're not talking hundreds. We're talking Richmond, Scotland football game full of people, if you can relate to that. So, you know, the effects it has on your family is just on and on and on. And this is not something that I look forward to tonight, but I felt led to do. And if there's anything that I can do, the only thing I got to hang on to is that wish that she wrote down about being able to talk to God about it. By George, she did it. She has had that opportunity, and I'm convinced of that. But she's a good person. She wasn't a bad person. She was brought up in the church, for whatever that's worth. You know, all the blocks had been checked. She had a great childhood. She's been to Disney World. All the stuff that you want to do. But that makes any difference. And it's hard not to accept some guilt, and I don't know that we'll ever be able to totally not accept any guilt, but you're still, you know, as a daddy, you feel like a failure because you couldn't fix it. And so I still deal with that, and I'll always deal with that. But I gotta satisfy my own curiosity. I'd like to see a show of hands for who is here because you work in this arena with mental health or the county or you are an elected official. Would you raise your hand? How many are not? Okay. That's a lot of the problem. I'm not saying thank you for being here. I'm not discounting the fact that you're here. I know as an elected official, you don't have to be here. I understand that. And I understand what you're doing as paid employees for it too. But the vast majority out there is not in tune. They're just not plugged in. And I guess people think if you just ignore it, it'll go away. But it ain't gonna go away. And it is a very, very powerful thing. We hear it every day. You know, you ask me, I'll tell you we don't have an unemployment problem in Scotland County. We got an unemployable labor force problem. You can't pass the drug test. That's more of a problem than jobs being available. And we got to fix that. Or else we're just going to die on the vine. And a lot of other people will too. But I thank you for the chance. It's sometimes good to hear yourself talk about it. And I would encourage, if there's anybody in this room that's here because you deal with it, and this is something that I would like to see maybe in this task force. We don't have a real strong support group, Al-Anon, NA, AA, in Scotland County. There are a few. Last meeting I went to, there was 4 people there. Reckon we got more than that need to be there? I imagine so. But, a lot of people don't know about it. And again, they're ashamed to be, I don't want to go to that thing. Like I said, I'm one of them. Ran in the door. Ashamed to be there. But then when I got there, I realized that's where I needed to be. It's faith-driven. They don't apologize for that. And it's a good, like I said, it gives you that chance to talk. And I would encourage you, if you're here because you're dealing with it, seek them out. And we need to do a better job of making them available. We do. Like I said, I could stand here all night and talk about the effects that it had on our family. I think the point has been made, and we don't want to belabor it, but I think that sometimes it's just something that we feel like that we shouldn't have to deal with. And another thing that I learned too was as going through with her to meetings and rehabs and so forth, I met surgeons who were in rehab. You know, it's like, it's not people that are indigent people always. Some of them are, but it has no boundaries. But like I said, I met professional people who were a heck of a lot smarter than me. And they were in there struggling with it too. And, you know, like I said, it just, sometimes it just doesn't. Another thing that was given to me one time, it helped me understand it, was a doctor trying to help me understand how powerful that it can be. He asked me if I had, we were actually talking about losing the trust and things that happen that you would think that a child or husband or wife or nobody would ever do to you, stealing or whatever it might be, to get that feeling. And two things he told me was, he said, you know, they get that one high, and then you spend the rest of your life trying to get it back. And you never can get there. You just won't ever get there again. But you, in your mind, you think, yeah, I can. Oh, that was so wonderful. I got to do it one more time.
And maybe not that it was so wonderful. It just made her feel normal.
Yeah, well, in my mind, my way of thinking about that is, I think initially it feels good, but then in time, you're right. You got to have it just to feel normal, just to feel like normal people, and be able to meet people and be around people. And the other thing was, he asked me, he said, have you ever been in a fight with your brother or your sister? And I said, yeah. And he said, they ever put the pillow over your head? I said, yeah, my big brother used to do that all the time. And to this day, it's awful. I mean, he'd hold the pillow over my head till I couldn't stand it. He said, well, what did you do? I said, I came out from under that pillow. It didn't matter to me who got hurt, what got broke. I'm coming out from under that pillow. And he said, that's your daughter when she needs it. He said, it's that strong. She's suffocating, and she's going to do whatever it takes. Stealing, she didn't want to hurt anybody. But if you were between her and that fix, it would happen. So those are just some little tidbits that kind of maybe help me in trying to relate to how it really feels. But thanks again, and we just pray that one day we can look back and say, well, we made a difference in Scotland County.
Thank you for that. I'll admit I had the unenviable, or what I thought was an unenviable task about calling and asking Danny for tonight. And I'll admit I did put it off a bit. But by the time I did, as soon as I picked up the phone or got Danny on the phone and said, we have this event, I've already heard about it. Well, we'd like to come speak to you. Well, I'll be happy to be there. You don't have to tell me yes now. But he was ready to go tonight, but he said, let me talk to my wife and let's do this. And without hesitation, they shared a very dark story. And unfortunately, that happens a lot. Now, the next person, someone I've not had the pleasure of knowing for long, But you will find a introduction on each of your tables. Dr. Gay. She has a doctorate in rehabilitation counseling, and she currently teaches or is an associate professor. Teaching's my fancy word for it, but she teaches at Wake Forest Med School. She teaches this on a regular basis. She has a bunch of letters behind her name. Y'all can take the 30 minutes to read them all. But she is an expert in this. She understands the clinical aspect to it, and this was why when we started talking about this, our health department said, we know exactly who we can get to speak as a subject matter expert on this. So, and I believe you may have a tie or two in this area as well.
I do. I'm a Scotland County native, born and raised here. So I would just say thank you guys for sharing your story. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm going to do due diligence as much as I can to honor her tonight as I do this presentation, because everything that you shared, I'm going to go through the data. I'm going to do that piece because a lot of people want to see the data, but I definitely want to make sure that when we leave here tonight, that each and every one of you take on ownership and responsibility of how we move forward strategically as a community to combat this epidemic. This is not something that just started yesterday. This has been going on for years, and I think what started to happen, I think the cover is up now. And I think it's starting to impact so many different populations in different ways that now we're starting to say, wait a minute, we got to do something different. I think, Kevin, you said something earlier about the 80s and the war on drugs and things of that nature. That was a scare tactic, right? And that's something that was embedded in us throughout. I remember being in school to just say no, and all you see the commercial with the brain on drug type thing. And I mean, now we can look back and say, that was really crazy. But in some ways, yes, but in other ways, no. That's not how that works. That's not the reality of it. I've had the opportunity to work in community-based work, working with individuals with substance use and mental health disorders. And I would tell you, when you read that, what Julie wrote, I was thinking to myself, that should be a banner. Because they walk around every day, almost like a scarlet letter. You guys remember the scarlet letter? Right? They walk around every day with that invisible scarlet letter on their forehead. And they know every day that somebody is stigmatizing them. Someone is discriminating against them because they have a legitimate disorder. We'll talk a little bit about that later on, but before we move forward, I put a little peach paper on your table. If you take that paper out for me, each and every one of you, and I want you to fold that paper into fours. So, my dad was a PE teacher and we used to do this thing called four squares. So this is my version of four squares. So, I want you to count your four squares and number them. Square 1, square 2, square 3, square 4. So after you have your squares numbered, I want you to think about what was just shared with us. And so when I say the word opioid misuse, I want you to think about it. I want you to write the first thing that came down in your first square. What's your initial thought? Opioid use. Opioid misuse. What's the first thing that comes to mind? Don't think about it, just write it. I'm a walker, so if that bothers anybody, I could try to stay still. Second square. I want you to think about opioid misuse. Who are those individuals? Who are those individuals that have an opioid use disorder? Who are those people?
Names or general
You
classification?
don't have to put nobody names. You can for your square. That's your square. And just disclaimer, this is a confidential space. What we talk about here stays here. Third square, places. What are some of the areas, or what are some of the places that you feel opioid misuse? Where does that occur? Where is it happening? Fourth square. When you think about opioid use disorder or opioid misuse, what are some things that you feel it impacts? Could you repeat that again? Your fourth square, what are some of the things that you feel opioid misuse impacts? Does it impact housing, jobs, relationships? What does that look like for you? In the middle of your square, as you look back on your 4 squares, what are some feelings or emotions that pop up for you? After you do your 4 square, you can put that paper to the side, we'll come back to it. So tonight, I was sitting here thinking as I was listening to you all, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna give them all the data, I'm gonna share what that looks like and things of that nature, but I definitely wanna have this conversation about ways in which opioid misuse, I'm gonna use it interchangeable, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about that, but I really, really want you to understand that each and every one of you are the answer that we seek. You hold it. You hold the answer. Reason being is, oftentimes when we're thinking about what something looks like, we respond based on that, right? Our own lens. Tonight, I want to challenge you to step out of that a little bit, right? It might be a little frightening, it might be a little challenging, but if you don't do anything else tonight, think of the possibilities. So tonight we're going to explore the scope of the opioid epidemic, some risk factors and health factors, and definitely identify some strategies and interventions. So I'm an addiction specialist in the state of North Carolina, and this is the criteria we use when we're looking at opioid use disorders and other substance use disorders. So we look at the impaired control, social impairment, risky use, and the pharmacological elements that goes along with opioid use disorder specifically, or whatever other substance. Now back in the day, we used to use DSM-4, so there was a thing called abuse and then substance dependence. But now, APA said, no, we're just gonna look at the severity. So you might have someone that has mild symptoms, moderate symptoms, and severe. When we're thinking about opioid use disorder, and when I go to the next slides, you'll see it's a severity. So someone could start out one way and I hear this all the time, people use drugs just to, enjoy themselves. They love the social element of it. That might be true. But then something happens. And like Cadell was just sharing, it hit that pleasure principle in your brain. And they're off to the races. I used to work residential treatment in a place called ARCA. ARCA did detox and they did short-term treatment. And I remember looking out and there were a range of ages in one group. You had young folks from 18 all the way to 65, 70 years old. That's the progression of addiction, right? You would hear the younger folks say, hey, they just didn't know how to do it. The older people will look and say, look how stupid you guys are. Look at where we are together. So that just goes to show that addiction has, it does not discriminate against age, sex, gender, SES, none of that. Its goal is to kill and destroy. Be mindful of that. Now, you're going to hear me say substance use disorder, substance misuse, things of that nature, and opioid use, opioid misuse, opioid use disorder. I'm talking about problematic use across the spectrum. Across the spectrum. Something is happening when this individual uses opioids that's creating some type of problematic issue. And like I said before, because you have a spectrum of symptoms, some things may be exacerbated. So this is what opioid use or your opioid use disorder might look like. You have the withdrawals, the nausea, muscle ache, diarrhea, fever, things of that nature. And one thing about opioid use disorder that we found, individuals that have opioid use disorder, when they're going through the withdrawal, they feel like they're going to die. And a lot of times, a lot of them return to use because they don't want to feel those withdrawal symptoms. Sometimes they have it in their mind, I can do this, I can do this. But because those withdrawal symptoms are so severe, they return to use. Unfortunately, what we're starting to see is the return to use is using more potent things that's on the street now, the fentanyl. Because I'm going to tell you guys, drugs ain't drugs no more. Not that drugs is a good thing, period. But drugs is not drugs anymore. People are making drugs in the back seat of their cars now. No telling what's in it. And with COVID, just like all types of supply chains kind of slowed down, so did the drug industry. And so some of the things that the drug dealers were cutting their substances with, they used fentanyl to compensate. So you might start to see individuals who, historically were cocaine users are now overdosing off of fentanyl. And that was never their drug of addiction. You have withdrawal from family hobbies, tolerance, continued use despite social and interpersonal issues. You hear this a lot, not just with opioids, but different substances. Why do they keep using if they know they're going to lose their job? Why do they keep using if they know it's impacting their family? Why do they keep using when DSS is now involved in their case? To us, it sounds real irrational, right? But to them, it's everything. That's not how it works. These are some of the risk factors. So you have the biology, the environmental, and the developmental. We have several different substance use models as it relates to biology. And one of the things that we are finding is, especially with women are more susceptible to cravings and relapse. Because a lot of times when you see a woman that comes in for treatment, they are usually on the severe end of the spectrum. Why, you might ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because most of the time, women are the caretakers of the children. Women are the providers, and they don't have the opportunity to just go to treatment, right? You guys were talking earlier about the treatment access. There are not a lot of treatment programs that accommodate women and children, or men and children. It's usually men or women. Now there are a few, but even those, the waiting lists are beyond control. I used to work on it, beyond control, so if you can find one, it would be great. Environmental, family, peer pressure, chronic stress, history of trauma, those type things. And developmentally, early drug use, higher risk of addiction. These are some health impacts. The GI system, the respiratory system. We're seeing a lot of, I work in medical school, so I work at the hospital, I'm in the hospital. And one of the things we're seeing with our older adult population is the falls. So one of the things that we started to look at was when they're coming into the hospital, looking at the medications that they're taking, and you would not believe how many older adults are misusing their opioids in conjunction with other substances like alcohol or Ambien and things of that nature, which is causing a lot of significant falls. HIV and infectious disease. I currently work with Dr. Barnes, who's an infectious disease doctor at Wake, and we have a grant where we're working with individuals who have opioid use disorders and an infectious disease. What we're definitely finding is there's a strong correlation in the language and how individuals are treated. And we'll talk about stigma later on, but that's a huge factor when it comes to that population. So why do individuals misuse opiates? The top reason at first was just to relieve pain. It wasn't to get high, it was just to relieve pain. Because as we're seeing now, pain is so subjective, right? We're starting to see that it was being abused. The second percentage was to feel good or to get high. The next was to relax or relieve tension. But the most important at first was to relieve physical pain. That was the reason for it. But I wanted to make sure that I showed you the wave. So a lot of individuals thought that the opioid epidemic it's new, and it's not. It really started back in '99. It started back in kind of like in '99. That's when we had the first rise in opioid prescription overdose. The second wave is when we start to see the increase of heroin use and overdoses related to this. And then the third wave we start to see with the synthetics, which are where we are now and growing with the synthetic fentanyl. So as you can see, it's progressing just like substance use, right? And these are just some factual moments about the opioid epidemic, like an overview. Almost 58 opioid prescriptions are written for 100 Americans at one entity. In 2020, more than 56,000 deaths involved synthetic opioids, other than methadone. From 2019 to 2020, more than 13,000 people died from drug overdose involving heroin in the United States, at a rate of more than 4 deaths every 100,000 Americans, and that number is rising. More than 17% of Americans had at least one opioid prescription filled with an average of 3.4 opioid prescriptions per patient. And then post-COVID, fatal overdoses increased from synthetic opioids. There was a significant increase occurring in Black Americans. So at the beginning of the opioid epidemic, there was a huge emphasis on younger white males because it was impacting that population. As the epidemic continued to progress, we started to see that it was hitting other populations. What's really starting to happen now, we're starting to see the Black and brown communities are being significantly impacted. One thing that I think I was sharing with Robert earlier, even though the research is saying that it's impacting Black and brown Americans at a significantly higher rate, now we're like, well, what's happening? Where are they? Because we're not seeing them in the ID clinic. But what we start to realize is we weren't looking at the correlation of other substances. For example, marijuana being laced with fentanyl, cocaine being laced with fentanyl, things of that nature. So it wasn't so much that it wasn't happening, it was how it was happening, and we were looking in the wrong places. And we couldn't have a conversation unless we talked about costs. Can you see it's continued to rise? This is data from 2020. We're at 1.47 trillion. So it's cost over $4 billion. It cost $4 billion more than in 2017. And that number is continuing to rise. So we're in 2022 now. So this is Scotland County. When I was preparing for this, I was like, what's happening in Scotland County? And this is from 2021. Robin and I talked about this even more, and I think he has even more data surrounding this. But as you can see, just in 2021, there was 278.6%, which gave a number of 97 opioid overdose, drug overdose ED visits. And 21 people had overdosed at that time of this statistic. Another element that I found very interesting is, and when we're talking about thinking outside of the box, is medication-assisted therapy. That's a real taboo subject for a lot of individuals because they're thinking, well, you just, substituting one substance for another substance. And that's what I mean by thinking outside of that box. Because addiction is not a one-size-fits-all model. And that's something that we need to understand. What worked for you might not work for me. What works for me may not work for you. And until we get into that mindset and create different opportunities for everyone to kind of figure out what works for them, we're gonna be in this wheel, in this cycle of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So what can we do? We know that opioid use disorder is a medically based disorder. We know that. There's no argument there. But what we often do is operate from a moral model. And I think the Cadells gave a great example about how we function in these realms. We know that it impacts our brain. We know that if someone that's been using opioids for over 5 years, that it significantly impacts the endorphins in their brains, right? So they may need medication-assisted therapy in order to feel balanced. That might be an option. But if we're going to operate from that moral model of, well, we're substituting another substance, then are we really doing due diligence for the individuals that we are really trying to help? Are we going to continue to stigmatize what we think based on what our clients need? That's going to take some change. It's going to take some change in our mindset, and it's going to take some change in how we function and operate. These are the spectrum of services for opioid use disorder. You have the harm reduction model. This has been one of those models that's, like I said, very taboo. It's very taboo. When we start talking about things like needle exchange programs, when we start talking about things like Narcan, we have in Forsyth County, we just opened a Narcan, almost like it's a vending machine in the jail. You can just go in, hit the button, it's free, and come on out. Now, it might be a little catchy going to the jail to go get it, but I'd rather go into the jail and go get it to save a life than you not go get it. When we're thinking about things like that, moral model think will be like, no, we're not doing that. Who does that, right? When you're thinking about things like, now I don't know, testing strips. That's been something in Forsyth County that has been going back and forth. And I know that some people are like, well, why would I give an individual with a substance use disorder, active substance use disorder, testing strips to give to their dealer to test to see if there's any fentanyl present? Well, from a harm reduction model, you're reducing risk of that overdose. But I can understand the logic and theory. But when we're thinking about outside the box and what can save a life and reduce the risk of any other infectious disease, those are the conversations we have to be willing to have. Again, psychosocial interventions, I think that was kind of like what the Cadells was talking about in terms of counseling services, things of that nature. I do agree that longer-term treatment would be helpful and beneficial. But I think you guys beautifully noted when you said, they asked it, when we told them we had insurance, the whole conversation changed. So there is a severe lack of access. A lot of people think, well, all they have to do is just go, down to the health department and sign up for treatment. It don't work like that. Don't work like that. Everyone knows that you have to get assessments done. There's people that have to be paid to do the work, right? And if they don't have services like Medicaid and things of that nature, it's even more detrimental. You also have recovery supports like peer support specialists or 12-step programs or other recovery-oriented groups. Another thing I want to throw out there is NA, AA, those elements are great. They're great support for individuals to help them with their recovery process. However, it's not an end-all be-all, right? It's not an end-all be-all. All of these things in collaboration will help with more effective outcomes. And individuals with opioid use disorders are often shunned from these support groups sometimes, especially if they find that they are on medication-assisted therapy. I don't know how many stories I've heard from my clients that says, well, I went to a meeting, but when I shared that I was on Suboxone, I was shunned. It's almost like that hierarchy there's a hierarchy of drug use, right? So if you know, smoke crack, you were this. If you snorted cocaine, you were here. If you snorted heroin, you here. There's a hierarchy. A lot of y'all looking like, really? No, there's hierarchy. I only snort cocaine, but I don't do this. When you guys talk about those people, there's stigmatization within the culture, within the drug culture. And we have to understand the language in which that happens. So if you do, as a provider, community member, politician, say, hey, we have these resources available, is it inclusive? Is it inclusive? So let's talk stigma. Let's talk stigma. This population is the most stigmatized population there is outside of individuals with HIV and AIDS. Because as I said, they walk around every day with that scarlet letter on them. There's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame. And I think you guys said it best. No one wakes up and says, hey, I want to be an opioid user for the rest of my life. Nobody does that. What I can say is, the reason why I had you guys do your 4 squares is to look at your own bias. Because what you believe is how you will practice. What you believe is how you would treat people with the opioid use disorder. So if you believe that they are scum on your shoe, that is how you would practice. You would not believe, even in a medical setting, having to correct providers based on their own stuff, their own stigmatization of this population. Soon as an individual comes into a system and says, you know, I'm an IV drug user, you wouldn't believe how many people shun them. Oh, they're med seeking. They're not in pain. They'll be okay. It's hurtful. Because you wouldn't treat somebody with diabetes who's sugar dropped like that, would you? You would do what you needed to do to help that individual's sugar elevate back to homeostasis, balance. And so I say that to say, sometimes we have to look at our own self and what are we doing to perpetuate the issue? They're often discriminated against. There's a lack of empathy there. You got yourself in there. You chose to use. Sorry that you addicted. Your issue. And then there's a reduction of access to care. There's an insured and uninsured. If you're uninsured, you get what you get. And you should be grateful. Almost like the haves and the have-nots, right? So these are some elements I find helpful when we're combating opioid use in our area. It's the 4 things: collaboration, conversation, education, and implementation. Collaboration, where you have like a task force. You have everybody sitting at the table, good, bad, and the ugly, discussing what is, whatever that looks like. What are the opportunities? What are the possibilities, right? You have addiction professionals, you have medical professionals, you have social workers, you have counselors, you have the community, individuals who are actually in that recovery process, to come and have a conversation of what can we do to collaborate and combat this epidemic for Scotland County. Conversation, non-judgmental dialogue. I'm going to say that 2 times for the people in the back. Non-judgmental dialogue. I tell my students all the time, I'd rather be curious than judgmental. I'd rather be curious as to what this person is experiencing and how can I meet them where they truly are than judge them for where they are. Education. Ways to reduce stigma regarding opioid use disorder and substance use disorder. I know I've said stigma, and I probably got stigma on my back too, because that is the silent killer. That is the silent killer. That's what helps perpetuate this. You would be amazed when you're having conversations with individuals about substance use disorder, what comes out their mouth. But it's based on their frame of reference. And you can't be mad at that. You can't be mad at someone's experience and their frame of reference of what that looks like. What you can do is have an honest conversation of what that could look like for the individuals that we're trying to serve. And implementation, improving access and diverse services is not a one-size-fits-all model. It's not a one-size-fits-all model. I wish we could, I wish this could be cookie cutter, but it's not. So we're gonna have to open some doors here. We're gonna have to look at some things differently. Again, what might work for this person might not work for that person, but do we have all the options on the table? It's like a buffet, right? So when we go to a buffet, we get what we like, what works for us, right? And what don't work, we leave. Same aspect here. What options do we have on the table that we feel that will meet this person where they are? Not where we want to be. Because I'm gonna tell you, and this work, and y'all probably know this already, anything you attack will fight you back. So we can't attack this issue. We have to address the issue and work in collaboration with the individuals to help them tell us what they need, not vice versa. That's nothing more than I can't stand if someone come into a place and say, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Instead of saying, hey, tell me what works for you. What does that look like for you? Now, I want you to pick back up your little peeps. Pick back up your little papers. Look at your 4 squares and your emotion in the middle. And on the back, I challenge you all to visualize what addressing opioid use disorder can look like for Scotland County. That's your homework assignment, and that's my challenge, and I'm going to check in. I'm going to check in on it. Fair enough? That's all I got. Thank you guys for your time.
And actually, part of the homework is why we're here tonight. But really trying to figure out exactly how we can do it, how we can move forward. In a few minutes, we are going to open it up for questions, comments, issues with the group. But before we started to do that, did want to introduce a few people. We're actually going to invite 4 representatives from our health department in East Point. They're going to talk about some of the resources that are actually currently available in Scotland County. And I know East Point, I will add a little bit on here. William Sellers, he's heard me say this a lot, and I've said this for the executive directors for the last 15 years at East Point. Every time they come down, and hi, I'm the new director. Great. We have mental health providers. Yes, we do. We have 2 great ones in Scotland County, the jail and the prison. Prove me wrong. They do their best. There are resources, but you're right. If you don't have blue chip insurance, it's hard to get into Carolina Behavioral Services. But there are resources available. But figuring out how to navigate those resources can be difficult, especially when dealing with all the other trying to hold that mobile that's your life in a hurricane going on. So, actually, if you'd like to go ahead and take over.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Cox, and I am a health educator and public information officer with Scotland County Health Department. Thank you again for attending this meeting tonight. I really would like to, I guess let me just first tell you my role as far as what we're talking about tonight, substance misuse, education, prevention is kind of something that I do more along the education and prevention line of this, and also helping get resources out and available to people that are in need. So with that being said, I really would like to introduce our exhibitors here tonight. They are just a drop in the bucket of some of the resources that are available here. First of all, we'll start with East Point. East Point is kind of an umbrella over a lot of the mental health and substance misuse services here in Scotland County. I'll let them explain further what they do. But right now we have William Sellers and we have Maria McCrimmon. And so I'm going to let them share with you exactly what they do, and then we'll move forward to the other exhibitors that we have here tonight.
Good evening. Maria McCrimmon. I am the Director of Mental Health Substance Use Care Coordination Services at East Point, which will be transitioning to care management soon. I guess just to talk a little bit about some of the things we do, kind of as you mentioned, you just mentioned like, oh, there's a new director. Well, hi, I'm the new director. I've been in the position since January, but doing this type of work is not new to me. I've worked with community providers doing both mental health and substance use services, outpatient substance use services. So working with East Point and being the director over care coordination is really important to me for several reasons. The mental health side is important, one, because I wouldn't have siblings if it wasn't for the foster care system. And having to, when my sister came into place, going through therapy, I thought this was like so interesting. It was like, I could share with this lady, she has to keep all her secrets, she's not gonna tell mom and dad, and we could just talk openly, and we were able to really share and come to solutions. And on the substance abuse side, I have an uncle who has had substance abuse issues and currently is over 20 years clean. So we've been very blessed in that situation. So both sides, the services and what we do is very near and dear to my heart. One of the things that you mentioned is regarding navigating resources. We help with that process in care coordination. We have care coordinators who assist with you having to get appointments to our community providers in your county. As we are transitioning with Medicaid, which I'm pretty sure maybe some of you are aware, with Taylor Plan coming into place with East Point April the 1st, one of the things that happens with Taylor Plan is each person that has Taylor Plan with East Point is assigned a care manager. That care manager is a point of contact to help you with navigating resources and service, not just with behavioral health, mental health, IDD, TBI, but also with your medical needs, your substance abuse needs, and not just with your primary care physician. It could be your gynecologist, it could be any specialist you have. So this is one way that we want to collaborate, all the entities collaborate together about that member. So the primary care physician is not doing one thing and treating one thing, and our community providers are not treating another, because we know that medical and substance use, we need to treat both together. So the care manager is one part of the Taylor Plan and Taylor Care Management that will hopefully assist with that process. One other thing I kind of want to talk about, and I am rambling, is I do hear loud and clear and recognize, being on the provider end and as well on the LME MCO, the need for inpatient treatment, more inpatient treatment for substance use providers in our area. We have had to send people out of state, and we recognize that, and that is some things that our network operation has been working on. We're continuing to add to our network. It all cannot happen overnight, but I think meetings like this help us hear from community providers, members in the community that we live, and families who have been impacted by things that's going on in the community, to know that this needs to be put on the forefront even more. So I'm open to any questions, I guess, at the end, and I'll turn it to my counterpart, William.
No questions? Wow, that went over very well. My name's William Sellers. I do community relations, and I'm gonna stand up, go into my country preacher routine here. For Scotland County, and I'm honored to be here. Scotland County is very unique. I work in Sampson County, Robinson County, all counties are different, and I'll tell you, we got a special group of individuals here. It's always a pleasure to work with here. And at East Point, you know, under our umbrella, we have a lot of providers. Many of them are here tonight. They do a great job, and we're so proud of them. The battle is great, and we hear the message well, that it takes all of us to be successful in this. I mean, East Point is a big organization. We can't do it alone. That's the reason Kevin and I, law enforcement, our health department, DSS, vocational rehabilitation, everyone that's in this room, we need everyone to be successful. That's why we're going out and having these town hall meetings. We want to get your input. It's not about what we want to do. It's about what we're going to do together collectively so that we can best serve Scotland County. But just a few things I wanted to mention tonight, and I won't keep you long. Our access to care number, how many of you know it? It's probably on the pen that you got at your table, at 1-800-913-6109. I'm gonna say that real quick. That is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 365 days a year. You can call on my birthday or Jesus's birthday. You will get a live person to speak with you and get you connected, a licensed clinician that will connect you with a provider, and we try to be 30 miles or 30 minutes. That's the benchmark to make sure you get it. Someone mentioned a while ago, what about those individuals that do not have insurance? And we know that that's a great challenge right now. But at East Point, we do have a thing called IPRS, which is state dollars that is earmarked for those individuals that are uninsured. So you're not going to be denied if you call us. We're going to get you connected. So we're not going to just use that as a barrier. East Point's not here tonight to sell you anything. I don't have anything for sale. That's not why we're here. We're here to connect individuals tonight. Another thing I wanted to mention tonight, somewhere around December 16th, 2021, Carol, you can correct me, one of our board members, along that time we got a grant from DHHS for our mobile care units. We've got one in the parking lot, and it was $2.5 million, if I'm not mistaken, is what we received. We purchased 6 of those. And they are mobile care units. They are clinical labs, if you will, where basically we heard what you were saying when we did needs and gaps. We heard that we need substance use services out in the community. We do not have as many providers as we would like to have, bricks and mortar. We heard you loud and clear. We're trying to meet that challenge with these mobile care units and other strategies as well. But one of them's in the parking lot tonight. Please, please, before you leave, take a moment to tour that. See what we're doing to try to combat this opiate epidemic that we're dealing with tonight. This is just one of the things that we're doing, one of the new strategies. We do have mobile crisis. Many of you have heard of mobile crisis. Kind of nod your head if you know what that is. It is available. You call East Point. You know, they will come out, basically assess and deal with whatever that challenge is. That is available. We do a lot of teaching. We do a lot of seminars. We do a lot of educating. I teach youth mental health first aid. I teach adult mental health first aid. I teach a lot of curriculums. If you have a need, if you need that in your area or your organization, we provide that. And here's the beautiful thing, we provide it for free. You don't hear that much. We want to serve Scotland County. We want to be here. We want to accept this challenge together with you. We can't do it alone. We need you. One other thing, and this will be the last thing that I say tonight. I'm 32 years in this business. A lot of things have changed. I remember when we worked on 2 separate halls on August the 1st, 1990, where substance abuse did not talk to those folks that worked in mental health. We didn't talk to them. We didn't think they knew as much as we did, and they certainly thought the same about us. We have learned that when we come together, when we're holistic, when we're integrated, when we bring in and we have conversation, when we staff cases with doctors, with care coordination, and with everyone, when everyone knows what the other one is doing, we can more effectively address it. That's why we're here tonight, to work together, to address this together. I cannot do what you can do. I can only do what I do, but together we can get it done tonight. But I just want to say one thing. That's the professional side of what I do. But over 16 years ago, I took 3 little boys into my home. I went and got them on the steps of Bladen County Sheriff's Department. DSS was waiting with them. Their parents were being arrested for opiates and drug addiction. I took those 3 children that had no clothes. I brought them home. I went through the full process, and Judge Fairley gave me guardianship of those beautiful little boys. My oldest one today is 16 years old, just got his driver's license. They're doing great, but they will never know their mother because she died from opiate overdose. They will never know their real mother. They were too young to know. So it has affected my home. And I get a bit tearful when I talk about it. So it's more than just professional to me. It hits home. Thank you so much.
And in talking about our mobile care unit, we have a special person here, Miss Alicia Moore. She's with, and I'd like for her to actually, if you'll look back toward your left, tell you a little bit about the mobile unit, and we're also hoping that everyone will go out and visit. So here you go.
Hi, my name is Alicia. I'm the director of Steve County Center. We've actually been servicing the member of South Carolina we now have a building literally 2 minutes from this location right here. But we were one of the lucky agencies that was provided the mobile care unit, and it actually launched in July of this year. We're located at DSS every Monday to try to provide services for the underserved population within the Scotland County community. We do travel to different locations, but mainly on Mondays from 9 to 4, we're actually parked at the DSS location. Our mobile unit is an integrated care service, so we have access to our medical providers, nurses. We could do intakes and assessment, clinical intakes and assessments, and we do provide Narcan. We recently got a grant to get Narcan on our bus, and now we're actually distributing Narcan and doing some Narcan education. And we'll actually have some of the participants who need to talk to any of our medical providers that could get further education on Narcan. We also provide an array of services, and we do have IPRS funds for the uninsured. So that's a blessing. So no one goes unserved under this particular agency. We have, with me is Morgan. She's actually from one of our methadone clinics in Fairmont. And we have Ms. Maria, who's a peer support who works on the facility, on the mobile unit, who you may see at DSS on Mondays. So anyone after this meeting, if you want, you can always tour the unit. It's not nice and pretty right now because you can't really see too much, it's dark, but you're welcome to see how we do stuff on the unit after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have Miss Lamara Chandler. She's with Robeson Healthcare Corporation, and she's going to talk a little bit about the services and programs that they have here for us.
My name is Lamar Chandler, and like Ms. Kathy said, I'm with Robeson Healthcare Corporation, and I'm a prevention specialist with the prevention department. And my boss, my supervisor, Ms. LaTasha Murray, she is the prevention director. She's going to give some more info into what we do and the resources that we're providing tonight.
Good evening. So Robeson Healthcare Corporation does have a facility here in Scotland County. We have Scotland Health Center. I have to get the address for you because just in case the address is not on here. So it's right across from the hospital. We have a medical center located right across the hospital, right across the street from the hospital. Other services that we provide for Scotland County include, we have a grant. We have a prevention grant that provides substance use prevention services to the community. We have lots of medication disposal packets. If you're not familiar with this, this is a packet that we are distributing in the community. You take the top off of it, you dump your old medications in it. We know that households have a lot of medications. We know that there's not a lot of access in the community for people to go and dispose of their medications. So you can do it right in your home. You dump the medication in here, put some water in this, zip it back up, throw it in the trash can. We also distribute the community lock boxes. We know that if you have young people in your home or if you're traveling, that, you know, one of the safe ways to keep that medication safe in your home is to keep it locked up. And I know what you're thinking, well, if somebody wants to get the medicine, they'll just steal the whole box. Well, you know, we're not trying to cure everything. What we're trying to do is also just make it safe in your homes. That if you have medications, you have especially little ones in your home, you know, this will be a way that you can keep your medications safe. And then another service that I want to bring to your attention, Dr. Gabe mentioned, gender-specific services. You know, obviously here in Scotland County, there are no specific gender-specific services or residential services for the community. However, in your neighboring community in Robinson County, we have Our House, who's available for women who are pregnant or who are postpartum up to a year. If they have a substance use disorder, we have a residential facility there that's located in Pembroke. And we also have Grace Court, which is also a facility, transitional facility for women who have children up to age 12 years old. If they have a substance use diagnosis, substance use disorder, they can come live at that site for up to about 2 years. And then we also have Men's Recovery, which is our facility that's for men only. And that facility is a 9-bed facility. That is a shorter stay. It is a 9-day stay. It's more so like a halfway house, but it's also an opportunity for men who are in recovery, who are seeking an opportunity to go to a facility to receive further assistance. And I could probably go on and 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 on about the wonderful presentation that Dr. Gabe gave. I was sitting on the edge of my seat because there was so many times I wanted to say yes, and because I thought I was in church. Because she was just really preaching and giving us some really good information. I'm going to end with saying this. One of the issues that we come across in Robinson County is xylazine. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know if you've heard of it. But it is something else that has been added into the mix of drugs that is called, it is wreaking havoc. So you hear about fentanyl being mixed in with marijuana and all these other things, where now there's this new drug called xylazine. And the FDA just put out a bulletin. We had a meeting last month where our harm reductionist gave us this beautiful presentation about the harmful effects of it and what it's doing in the community and how it's been mixed in. And then lo and behold, last week the FDA issued a warning about the effects of it. Opioid use in our community is a huge problem, and we're here to help. Stigma, that is another thing. We are here, let me just say this. Again, my name is Latasha. Please call me because I am all for helping create a stigma campaign for this community. We have funds for that. Stigma, the language that we use when we're talking to people. I'm amazed at, you mentioned about medical providers and police officers and people who are in the helping profession who are not really helping. And some of it is because of stigma, and some of it is because of, it's stigma. It's because of their thoughts and their own personal ideas about drug use. And the last thing I'm going to say is, I see on that table is Narcan. We have naloxone, which is similar medication that can be used to reverse the effects of opioids. So again, we have this also free of charge. We have funding that will be able to give a supply here in Scotland County. Thank you.
And lastly, we have, I have the pleasure of introducing Mary Susan Baggett. She is from East Point's Geriatric Adult Specialty Team. And she is a resource for presentations and training. And I'll let her give you just a couple of minutes of some of her expertise.
Hi, I know y'all can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. I did want to make mention that as I go through the communities and I send out emails and make calls and stop by different agencies and programs, my role under the North Carolina Geriatric Adult Specialty Team, and of course I'm assigned with East Point, so I cover Robeson and Scotland County specifically. But my role really is to do free presentations, discussions, and I would love it if I could get invitations to speak somewhere, whether it has to do with adult and older adult substance use issues exclusively, or the mental health issues. But I also do education related to dementia and memory loss and that thing. So anyway, I do have here on the table some booklets that I was able to get from the National Institute on Aging and the National Institute on Health. One on Beyond Hangovers, and this one is on older adults and alcohol. And then I have one on preventing prescription drug abuse. Now this was something that was ordered for us. But the last thing I want to make mention of is I have a flyer here with 2 dates, which I am doing a free webinar on holiday substance relapse triggers. It's a good reminder of things that we can do as we're planning our get-togethers with our family, or if you yourself are struggling with a substance issue, is to just point out some of the difficulties that come up, the reminders, the family issues that will resurface, as well as maybe an individual has left the environment that may have been very toxic, may have been an abusive home, or coming back to that area may bring up trauma issues. And so it's very important to just kind of look at those, talk about the reality of it, and know that there are triggers that will come up each and every time. So that is a free webinar, and I have a lot of those that I do each month on different topics, but then I go places and present in person. I will say that there's been lots of attempts to try to make folks aware and develop some interest within the community, and we just haven't somehow gotten in the door. I know this isn't a topic. Sometimes mental health topics, substance use topics aren't always popular and pleasant conversations, but it's the reality of the families and the individuals that are struggling with this issue. And we need to make the whole community more aware so that then they're more capable of not perpetuating the myths and the stigmas that have been identified tonight. So if you have interest in the webinar, December, I do have a, just an interest form where if you'll put your name and your email, then I can send you the direct links to that. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we appreciate all of you being here tonight. And so I'm going to turn this over to Robert Sampson, who is our EMS director. I think he's got a lot of great information for us as well.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Robert Sampson. I'm the Emergency Services Director here for Scotland County, and it's an honor to be here tonight to stand before you as we come together to try to combat what we know is a huge problem in our community. I want to take just a few minutes just to share the data with you. I'm going to share some state data, and more importantly, I'm going to share the data for our community here in Scotland County so that you can all best understand the need for us being here tonight. And then I'm also going to take just a minute to demonstrate and talk a little bit about Narcan itself, the importance of Narcan, why we use Narcan, when should we use Narcan, and I will do a brief demonstration of how to use Narcan. So at the end of tonight, if you have an interest in learning more about it, if you feel that there's the potential that you would have a need for such in your home, or if you know someone who potentially would possibly have the need for having Narcan, please come to the table here with the white tablecloth at the end and see me. And I have some that I can give for you to take home with you tonight. So please do not hesitate to come speak with me. Some of the data that was mentioned in the presentations earlier, I know Mr. Goodale talked about the state data for 2021, and he was spot on. In 2021, from January to August, the suspected overdose deaths in the state was an increase of 24% in 2021. So far in 2022, again, this is the data from January 1st to August of 2022. In the state of North Carolina, there have been 2,763 suspected overdose deaths just in the state of North Carolina. So now let's put that into perspective of where we're looking at in Scotland County. So far in 2022, from January to today, we have ran a total of 189 overdose calls just in Scotland County. Again, 189. We have administered Narcan 163 times so far this year. And we still got another month to go, month and a half to go. So whenever you average that out, we're averaging 3.5 overdose calls a week. That is in a week. And as Dr. Gay mentioned, in 2021 in Scotland County, we ran right around in the 90s. The overdose calls were in the 90s. I think your number was 97, I think it was. 97 in 2021. And in 2022, it's 189. So, almost double. So that is putting it in perspective of the impact that we're having here in Scotland County. So I want to take just a minute, and I'm going to cut this off. I'll speak loudly so you can hear me, because I will need both of my hands. So if there's a concern in the home, or if you know someone that has a concern that they have a loved one or a friend that is suffering, that there may be a potential overdose that may occur in the home, then there is a medication called Narcan that you can go to the local pharmacies right here in town to talk with a pharmacist or representative there about getting Narcan to take home. As Dr. Gay mentioned, in 2013, during the third wave that she mentioned, that's when the synthetic drugs were being manufactured and made and put out on the market. Also in 2013 is when the state of North Carolina deregulated Narcan. Prior to that, the general public did not have access to this medication. But from 2013 to present, anyone can go to a pharmacy and get Narcan.
and that is because of this pandemic that we're in. So if you did a quick demonstration on how to use it, this would be what you would get if you went to the pharmacy to get it. But this medication you would give, or an individual would give intranasally, which means you would squirt it up the nose, it would be absorbed through the membranes, and then take the effect. This medication only works on an opioid overdose, okay? And if it is an opioid overdose, you administer this medication, it will start the reversal process of the drug, okay? When do you give this medication? If you have a loved one, or if you come to someone who is unresponsive and they have what we call agonal respirations, but their respirations, you notice, are not normal, they're breathing slow, and you suspect that they may be experiencing an opioid overdose, that is when you would want to administer this medication. So you simply would just stick it up the nostril and squeeze, and then push the plunger, and it's that simple. Then you let the medication start working. This medication you will not see the effects of the medication take effect and the person start recovering immediately. It may take a couple of minutes, okay? And I know those couple of minutes may seem like an eternity, but it will take a few minutes before the medication starts working and starts reversing the effect of the medication. With time, respirations will start improving and the person will start waking up. Okay? So that's just a quick down and dirty on how this medication works and how you would administer it. Again, if there's an interest at the end, please come see me. I'll be more than happy to let you demonstrate. I'll let you do it so that you see exactly how easy it is. And I have some, and I know there's some back here at the back as well, for you to take with you if you feel the need. Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to add that it may take more than one dose.
Yes.
You know, I work with EMS in Robinson County, and they go on calls, they've had to do that 4 times. You know, and so it could take just more than one dose of that. And then the other thing that, questions that I get when I do the training with the naloxone Narcan is, if you come up on somebody who's passed out and you give it to them, it ain't gonna hurt them if that ain't what it is. You know, if it's something else, passed out for some other reason, just because you gave them Narcan, it's not gonna hurt them.
So now I will elaborate just a little bit more on that. If there's concern about if you're going to administer this medication, is it going to hurt them? If they are not experiencing an opioid overdose, this medication has no effect on the body. Okay? So you're not going to harm them by giving it if they are not experiencing an opioid overdose. Okay? Because of how it works, how it works in the body, there is no harm, okay, administering this dose of Narcan. So it is a very safe medication to give.
Does it treat fentanyl?
Yes, it does. It treats opioids, in which we all know fentanyl is an opioid, so yes, it does. It will start working if there is if you suspect, or if there's a suspicion of a fentanyl overdose. Yes.
And I will say there are a lot of educational materials on your tables that's concerning opioids, kind of what the overdose looks like, knowing what the signs you might be looking for, what the signs and symptoms of an overdose looks like, or if you think somebody's. So there's all kinds of, there's information about the Good Samaritan law. So there's plenty of information. Please feel free to pick those up and take with you if you want. If you feel like you need them, but they are there as part of this education tonight.
And we can have those sidebar conversations.
Yeah.
If you would like to learn more about what Ms. Kathy just mentioned, we can definitely elaborate in more detail.
Kathy, do we have the electronic version of those handouts?
We do.
That maybe we could send out if they.
If anybody wants to, those little tablets on your table, if you want to leave your name and a contact information, an email address perhaps, that we can share it with you via email, or just call us. You can call us here at the health department, ask for the health educator, and we'll be glad to share with you at that time any kind of information you might not want.
I have a question. You're talking about the numbers in Scotland County, 130.
189, yes, ma'am.
189. What's the breakdown in location? Like, what ethnicity is higher in numbers than others, or what location is
The question, just so I can repeat it, of the 189 overdose calls that we've taken over the last 10 months, is there a specific breakdown between race or location, community in the county?
Yeah, so from locations in the county, it's countywide. There's no one specific area or one specific community in our county that sticks out over another. I think that's so important to make sure that there's a clear understanding on. These numbers reflect a countywide issue. From an age standpoint, we are seeing that these numbers reflect more of the 20, 30-year-old population would be your higher population, but we do have 50s, our 58, 50 ranges in there as well. So although it would be nice to say, we've got this specific community that we've got a higher, population of response to, that's not the case in our community. It's truly countywide.
And now kind of the main point of the evening is, I'm not included in this, but we have we have experts in the room, we have resources in the room. What questions do you have of them? Or comments?
If somebody walks in my office tomorrow and tells me that they have a family member who is in need of help, where do I tell them to start?
Okay, I'll answer that one. The 800 number that I was telling you about is East Point. East Point's located in Lumberton.
Yeah, I'm familiar with these.
We're the MCO. We cover Scotland County. That's the way it starts. Now, of course, if it's a medical emergency, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a medical emergency, we want 911 involved. But if they come in and they say, I've got a problem, I've got a substance use problem, I want some help, the first step is to call that 1-800 number. Let's get them connected, talking to a live licensed clinician that can assess that person and get them connected with the services that they need. 30 miles, 30 minutes. That's the big plan for being able to connect the individuals.
And if mobile crisis is determined to be needed at that point.
Yeah. And that's all the changes. If there's suicidal ideations or any of that, and you can chime in anywhere you want to here, Maria.
Yeah, just as you mentioned, we would dispatch mobile crisis, and if it was need be, someone would be out to wherever the member is located. And they have strict time frames as well.
And also, if you're suffering from it, or a family member, a close friend, also, please, come by DSS on Mondays, reach out to the van that's out in the far end of the parking lot that doesn't get nearly enough traffic. They want you to come in. Robson Healthcare, they want you to come in, and they're there to help. You may not be the one who has the addiction, but you're one of the people who is suffering, and they can help you provide resources. But please take some of these little Post-it notes have them littered around your house, littered around your neighbor's house, taking notes, just so the number is there. Because finding where to go when you're in crisis, you're not going to do it if you don't have a number.
If you want pamphlets from, East Point has some wonderful pamphlets over there specifically for substance misuse or mental health or behavioral health with the numbers right there. So if you wanted several of them in your own agency or to have on hand for any reason, you could have them there. That's a way, Danny, like people may come to your office and you wouldn't know that or anything, but they might see something on their way out and go, I need this number, where they can call. And that's how we do it at the health department. We provide them with those numbers that we are given first off, because we're not the care provider for something, but I get calls several times a month on a mom or a dad or someone calling me saying, I have this happening, what can I do? Who do I call?
If I could piggyback just real quick on our mobile care units, they're outside right now. Do we have anyone in here from Stevens Outreach? That is look, there's our folks right here at the table.
Did I miss you guys? I didn't, did I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you did.
We don't want to overlook anyone.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you have anything for, say, the parents that's going through the crisis? Any kind of mental health? I mean, because I lost my son 8 years ago Sunday. And my wife's dealing with this opioid. She's been dealing with it probably 15, 20 years. And I mean, it's really bad. They say they take every dollar they can get and spend. They forget their family members, they forget their grandkids. They just, I mean, you can't hardly stay in the house with them. Because if you turn your back, they'll take everything you got. Do you have anything for family members, like I say, that's been struggling with this type of problem? Because I've been through a lot in the last 15 years, dealing with the type of problem. Sometimes you don't know if you're going to make it or not. Like you said, tomorrow's another day. I drive a school bus. I deal with a lot of kids. I've seen a lot of problems with kids that some of them lost over the years. So it is really a bad situation with the drug thing.
I think one of the first places that you could start, just as William mentioned, is our 24-hour access number. Just saying some of the very same things that you just mentioned. I would think outpatient service would be a great start there's definitely probably groups that we could look into, but outpatient services is a great start. Also, one of the things, you're in here with your community providers. All of these providers, if they are providing some of these enhanced services, are definitely providing outpatient services as well. So these are some of your providers in the community that we would link you to get an appointment, to get access to services as well. So, you could start it even the day by going over, talking to some of your directors, or you could call our access number.
Yes.
Where are they getting it? And the reason I ask is, you notice it's been in the news that opioid has, there's been a problem because folks have just been giving them out or something. And so I'm just wondering, where are they getting it from? Are they getting it from the doctors and they're not checking on it? I have a sister who's taking opioid, okay? And because she has a lower back problem. And so she goes to the pain doctor, he gives her so many tablets, and when she goes back, they want to see her bottle and see how many tablets she's taken, and and they have a check, and I guess a way of checking it. So I'm just wondering, how's all these tablets getting out here that folks are checking them?
Well, part of it, and it's part of the reason with the lawsuits nationally, because originally, years ago, my father went in for shoulder surgery. And he came out with a 90-day supply of opioids, taking 6 pills a day. That was, he got out on Thursday. On Saturday, after he couldn't figure out why he had some very bad dreams, he switched to just Tylenol and called his doctor on Monday, and he said, yeah, you don't take any more of those. That has changed under state law. Under surgeries, it's 3 days prescription now. But you have people who do have chronic pain that are able to get that, get longer prescriptions. They're out there, but also there is a significant market. But actually, if the was able to, he had a conflict earlier in the meeting, but he was able to join us. Would you like to make any comments on supply?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, all of you who are here. I think we have a vast problem. We have something that, first of all, we need to make sure that we don't ignore, because everyone has to be a part of the solution. I think one of the problems that we do have is that not only do we find that prescriptions are being given from our pharmacists, but we also have individuals who are doctor shopping. We have individuals that are getting medications from not just one particular pharmacy, but they're going to others. There's a lot of fraudulent information that's out there. So not only will they resort to stealing it from locations, but we also have individuals that will go to others' homes and take the medications from them. We now have a vast number of cases that we receive even with the police department where individuals are having their medications stolen from the mail. Now that we have the capability of not actually going to the pharmacy to get your medication, it can be removed from your mailbox. Now we're talking about it, as we once said, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes us all to be a part of the problem of this opioid epidemic. And I'm glad that you're here. And I think just like any other emergency, we start with educating. Educate, educate, educate. The more we educate ourselves about what it's doing, how it's affecting everyone, I think one of the problems that we see, even in reference to gun violence, we sometimes think it doesn't affect us. Well, it does affect you. It affects you because the more that is happening, that we don't get a chance to provide more education, the bigger the problem becomes. The problem that we have in law enforcement, once the problem gets so great that we're talking about it, as we're talking about it now, it's usually too late. It's the iceberg theory. We only start talking about something that we start recognizing when everything beyond that has already grown. So I'm thanking all of the partners that are here, because without partnerships, we're not able to make change. I think everybody here is doing what they're doing because of change. So just as the county manager has stated, we have seen a large number of incidents that I believe that with the opioid epidemic, it only leads to additional problems in our community. And it's not based on economics, because this is not just for those who have low economics values in their home. We're talking about individuals who have 6-digit incomes. We've got people that reaches every walks of life. So when you realize you have an epidemic, that means it's affected everybody. So I'm here, and again, I apologize for my delay. I had someone else I had to go to. I have a member of my department who lost their mother. So again, I think that we are all at an urgency, that we take the mindset that we must learn more about what the problem looks like, because it's affecting everybody. Thank you, sir.
And just another little point of personal history. I do have 2 children. They're both in college now. And for the longest time, I did everything I could to keep them as naive as possible. Short of private school, which I also knew wouldn't have changed much. But they were both in the honors magnet program at Spring Hill. My kids were nerds. But I did, you know, I wanted to keep them as safe as possible. One day we were having a conversation at dinner about drugs, and I asked both of them. My son was in the 6th grade, just got to middle school. My daughter was about to get out of middle school. Okay, how long would it take you? Well, first of all, could you find drugs at school, and how long would it take you? If you started when you got there, would you have them before you got off, before you left to school, or would you have them before lunch? They said I would have them before the end of first period, and I wouldn't have to leave my classroom. So,
where are those coming from? Mexico?
I would say this, people are making them themselves too. I don't know if you guys have heard, but Amazon Pill Press is on fire. And which is why we're starting to see a lot of, like you was talking about the Zizine, we're starting to see people making their own concoction, street pharmacists, if you will, and making their own pills, which is why we're seeing an increase in fentanyl. Just like the waves that I was showing, it's not just about the prescription drugs anymore. It's not just about the heroin anymore. Now we're in a new wave, and the wave is going to continue. But it's the home pharmacists that's putting these, they're not measuring anything. They're just pressing it, and it's on the streets, and it's killing. So it's not just someone stealing from their mother's house or grandmother's house. You can order it online.
I don't know how to do it, but yeah, you could go off and go online.
And I think
it's not normal Amazon, but you can order everything you need.
And I think he's making a great point about having conversations with our children. I think that's one of the things that the gray area that I think we miss is because the way we grew up is no more. They have access to so much that they can't even develop in their process. They can tell you what to do, but they can't tell you what that means and how that will impact them long term. And so until we are able to have those conversations, those candid conversations, and be okay with having those conversations and not shield them, because one of two things is going to happen. Either we can talk about it at home, or the streets will talk about it with you. And so I say this very open. I have a 16-year-old, and same thing. He knows what mama does, and I go to the school all the time. One of the things that I find so interesting is if you're talking with your clients, they'll tell you exactly who has what, how potent this is. Don't go there. They'll tell you. We just have to listen and be okay with what we're hearing.
Well, even the kids who are not using things, they know in high school and middle school where it is, and often I thought, no, you're just saying that. And then like 2 years later, that particular child is in bad trouble. So yes, the one who wasn't using did know who was. And that's just, how do they know all that stuff? I don't know.
So I want to read this to you. You know, one of the large campaigns in North Carolina right now is called the Lock Your Bags campaign. And that's the reason why we do some of the stuff we do right here. Somebody just asked a question, and I want to kind of answer it with this card. She gets her soccer skills from her mom, her sense of humor from her dad, and her drugs from her home medicine cabinet. When 53% of the youth who get medications, when they at school, it is because they got it from either their home, because unfortunately maybe a parent or somebody did get hurt, they had this medication. Parents, where do we keep our medicine? We keep it on the kitchen counter, we keep it in the bathroom, it's accessible. And then they go to a friend's house. So maybe you don't have the medicine at home, but your child goes and visits a friend, and that friend, parents may have their medications out in the open. Or they go to a family member's house, and that family member, they go to grandma's, they go to granddad's. That is how a lot of our youth, because not all of our kids are making it, in the backyard. They're just getting it off the counter in our house. And that is another reason why I'm trying to get everybody that, because think about it. When you finish with your medication, what do you do with it? Some people flush it, but most of the time, I want you to admit it, most of the time you stick that medicine somewhere just out of your sight. You're not using it anymore. You probably still got pills left in that
might need it later.
So you're not monitoring it, you know, you just put it somewhere out of sight. And that's the reason why one of our biggest campaigns is get it out of your home. Because once you get it out of your home, it's not gonna solve all the problems, promise you it's not. You know, but it's just another way, you know, to decrease the access that our youth have to those types of medicines. And I'm telling you, I've seen kids steal their parents' heart medication because they don't know all these pills and they thinking that, you know, hey, I'm just gonna take these, I'll go to the school trying to sell them. And I get a phone call saying we got a child out here with some chocolate, you know, some total stack. Because they really don't know. So we just gotta be careful about how we're keeping our medicines in our home.
And if you want to scare yourself at some point in time, look up Skittles Party.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, any other questions? Or anybody else? Now's a great time because you do have experts around the room who can talk.
Do you have any suggestions, like if you know something's going on, do you have any suggestions or solutions, possible thinking outside of the box that we could look at to try to tackle this problem? I mean, it's so huge. And
Do you go, I mean, I know you've got all these experts, do you go into the schools? Okay, okay.
And there's a process of doing that too, but.
Talk about drugs though, I see a lot of people, you know, I got hurt and I got a bottle of pills. The thing they do, they go sell them. They don't take the pills, they sell them. They go back to the doctor, they get some more pills. They go back and sell some more. Or a lot of them trade. I got this, I'll trade this for this. So it's never ending thing.
I'd like to know, like you said, sir, earlier, about where is help for the families that have this going on in their own home. There are families out there that are just at their wits' end. They have no idea what to do. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of anxiety. It's a lot of anger. It's a lot of whatever you might want to call it, sadness, disbelief. Where's the help or whatever? Did I hear you say, Danny, earlier, Al-Anon or somewhere, do they talk to individuals like you said you all went to a program like that?
It is not for the addict or the alcoholic, but it's for people who are affected by it. And I would highly
It's not a be-all, take care of everything.
No.
But we went 5 years, twice a week.
But what you'll have to do is, it's a process.
I think it's called Al-Anon for the family members that have been affected.
Yes.
There's Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and then there's Al-Anon, Alateen, and they've got it in a number of populations.
Even that for adult children.
Yes,
I just
yes.
don't think, I'm not really, I may be speaking out of school, but I don't think we have a very strong presence in Scotland County. I know some in Moore County. And as I said, they don't have a magic wand. They can't change your situation. But what they can do is get you to focus on yourself rather than the person with the problem, and fix you and make life tolerable for you. And it's a process. It takes it doesn't happen in 2 meetings, but much like AA or Alcoholics Anonymous, you'll have a person that you can pick up the phone at 10:30 at night if you don't know where to turn and what else to do. And I can tell you one story that one of my very dear to me was helped me a lot. And one time our daughter had convinced us again that she needed a car, you know, and she was very good at that. And I was almost starting to think, well, maybe she does need a car. So I picked up the phone late at night and I called him and I told him what I was thinking. And he said, Danny, how many cars have you bought? And I told him. And he said, well, how many times has it worked? I said, none. And he said, why the hell are you calling me? I mean, and just to hear him say that, that was it. That was the end of the conversation. It just hit me like, yeah, here I was with that stinking thinking again, getting ready to go right back down that road. And, you know, it just helps to hear yourself talk to somebody who understands where you are and what you're thinking and dealing with.
You will hear your story at Mount My meeting.
That you thought was only yours.
Right.
That's right.
I have to say, if I had to talk, when I was growing up, I was a bachelor, I won't say the word. But after my son passed, if it hadn't been for me talking to people, I don't know where I'd been. I'd probably over them.
Sure.
But by talking to people, and you know what I find? I've been walking in Walmart, and you bump into somebody and you start talking, and they had the same problem. And that was so amazing to know that you run into somebody, you think you got the whole problem, and these people's got the even worse. There's a lot of them having even worse.
I would say you guys came up with your first strategy.
Yeah.
That's the first strategy.
Yeah.
Develop a
Yeah,
Al-Anon.
it's built up an Al-Anon program. I agree. I mean,
We need it. We definitely need it. I mean, if you got money to help support it, we need it, because there's so many people suffering that's been through this type of problem. It's tough.
Kevin and I he just brought me something. I appreciate you doing that. Basically about CFAC. I don't know if any of you have heard of CFAC. Some of you are nodding your heads, but it's Consumer and Family Advisory Committee, and it advocates for members, for those like yourself, you know, your children, those that have had challenges and things. We desperately need a representative from Scotland County. We do not have one, and the last time I went to the meeting, they said, William, can you get us a representative from Scotland County? Now, a lot of you would qualify, and I would be thrilled to share this information with you. Please help us step up, because we need to give voice and choice.
And you have a number of those brochures?
Yeah, there's several here.
Got tons of them. Tons of them.
I asked if any of it could have been coming from Mexico and places like that, but I just looked it up. China's sending a lot of fentanyl in this country.
Yeah.
And how it's getting distributed is way more dangerous than oxycodone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it being prescribed for pain?
Yes, it is for pain.
Well, this
Well, I know that.
Yes, but
What kind of pain do you have to have?
it's the monitoring. It's not, it's just like any drug. It wasn't designed to be in the masses and illicit
I
thinking.
don't think it should be in a hospital.
Yeah.
That's where it's monitored.
Yeah, it's like propofol.
Yeah.
It's administered in a clinic or in a hospital, but I can get some.
well, I can tell you a story you won't believe. Our daughter was using oxycodone, and she harmed herself, ended up at Duke Hospital. Had to have 24-hour surveillance because they felt like she was a threat to herself. She had surgery, stayed in there 2 days, left with a boyfriend with a bottle of oxycodone and a prescription for some more. I tried to talk to somebody at Duke, and I could have talked to President Obama easier than I could have got to an administrator at Duke. I spent 3 days, and my wife finally said, you gotta let go of it. It's gonna drive you crazy. Just let go of it. They gave her a bottle, which is why she was in there.
Well, my son went to Chapel Hill, I think it was. He had a small cyst come up in his arm. And he made a note before he passed away, and he said that when he first started with drugs, he smoked marijuana. He said that he didn't really like that high. And he said the doctors gave him, I believe it was Lorceps or Percocet in Chapel Hill, and he liked the high. And from that day on, I think he, until, and he was 13 when that happened. And he was 30 when he passed away. So, it's a deal.
Any? Yeah, we said 7:30 and we're well past that. But please, feel free, if you have any additional questions, reach back out to us, contact East Point directly, contact one of our other providers, contact the county. I can't answer them, but I know people I can get in contact to. So, but we will be having these events again in the future. The goal is to, again, just to start a conversation in the community so that we can generate even more tips, so we can help people over time. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
And thank you, Danny, and Carolina Cadell, and all of our vendors. We appreciate you coming to Scotland County to participate and share your expertise with us. We appreciate all of you coming. We are planning to have a couple of more of these events starting in maybe, I think, January or February. Please share and ask other people, come again. Bring someone else, let them know, and we'll have this and maybe even some new additional information that we can share with you all.